The cowboy laughed at his mail-order bride until her hidden talent saved everything. The sun had barely risen over the endless red dunes of Karen 5, casting long shadows over the small frontier settlement of Dustwind Outpost. The planet's twin suns made the sky a pale gold, and the air shimmered with heat. Jace McAllister, a grizzled space cowboy with a wide-brimmed hat and sun-beaten coat, leaned against the railing of the rickety landing platform. He squinted at the horizon, waiting. A freighter's engine groaned in the distance, kicking up a swirl of sand as it descended. Jace crossed his arms and muttered under his breath, "I hope whoever's inside can survive a 5-minute walk in this dust storm." Inside the freighter, Alara adjusted the strap of her bag. She had traveled across half a dozen star systems to reach this remote outpost. She was not nervous, her eyes gleamed with determination, but she did not expect to see the barren landscape and the rough edges of the settlement. Dustwind was small, isolated, and unforgiving. Perfect for those who could survive, but deadly for those who could not. The freighter's ramp hissed as it lowered. Jace's horse, a stubborn hybrid of Earth Stallion and Karen 5 native strider, stamped impatiently. Dust swirled around the landing pad. Jace wiped his hand across his face, leaving a streak of dirt. "Here she comes," he said, trying to sound casual, though his gut told him he was about to be disappointed. Alara stepped off the freighter, her boots sinking slightly into the loose red sand. She wore simple clothing, sturdy pants, a fitted jacket, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded her face. She carried no weapons, just a small bag, but there was something about the way she walked, steady, confident, that made Jace raise an eyebrow. "You ought to introduce yourself," she said, her voice calm but firm. Jace snorted. "I'm Jace McAllister, you the mail-order bride." He let the words hang in the dry air. Alara's lips curved into a faint smile. "That's what the papers said, but I prefer my own name, Alara Venn." Jace chuckled. "Name or no name, this place'll chew you up if you don't know how to handle yourself." "I can handle myself," she said simply. Her tone had no arrogance, only confidence, but it carried weight. Jace laughed. "Oh, I like you already," he said, though there was a hint of mockery. He turned toward the path leading into the settlement. "Come on, Miss Venn. Let's see if you can walk without tripping in the dust." Alara followed. The settlement was sparse, several wooden and metal buildings, a single general store, a few workshops, and a corral where rugged horses and striders grazed. The residents, rough-looking humans and a few alien traders, glanced curiously at the newcomer. Children hid behind crates, peeking at her. Jace guided her to a small wooden house with a creaking porch. "This'll be your place. Don't expect luxury. Ain't nobody in Dustwind gets luxury." Alara stepped inside and looked around. The interior was simple, a wooden table, 2 chairs, a bed pushed against the wall, and a stove in the corner. A single window offered a view of the endless dunes outside. She set her bag down and nodded. "It's perfect." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Perfect." "For surviving," she said. She unpacked a few things methodically, stacking them neatly. Jace scratched his chin. "I'll admit you're organized." He left her to settle in while he returned to his horse, muttering to himself. "This'll be interesting," he said. He didn't yet know that she was capable of far more than surviving in the desert. Later that evening, the settlement gathered around the small communal fire. The twin suns had dipped below the horizon, leaving a cool, violet sky. Residents spoke in low voices about the harsh heat, scarce water, and occasional alien scouts seen near the dunes. Jace brought Alara with him, introducing her formally. Some of the settlers stared skeptically, others with amusement. A few whispered about how foolish it was to bring someone from off-world into the dangerous frontier. Alara listened politely, absorbing every detail. "It sounds like life here is demanding," she said. "That's one word for it," Jace said dryly. "You need to know how to shoot, ride, and survive, or you don't last a week." Alara nodded. "I understand. I've trained for challenges like this." Jace smirked. Trained in what? Reading books about the desert. I trained with machines, tools, and people who taught me to adapt. I can fix things, create things, and think fast under pressure, she said simply. The settlers exchanged glances. They were used to frontier women who cooked, cleaned, and stayed out of trouble. Alara's words hinted at something different, something useful, practical, and maybe even dangerous in a good way. Jace laughed again, louder this time, shaking his head. Well, I'll be a bride who can fix machines. Next, you'll be telling me you can fight Xyler aliens with a wrench. Alara smiled faintly. I might. The wind outside picked up, carrying a strange metallic echo from the desert. Jace frowned. Huh, that ain't normal. The settlers quieted, looking toward the horizon. Alara tilted her head. Sounds like an engine, not human-made, could be scouts. Jace froze. He wasn't used to someone noticing that. He had spent years fighting off threats in the desert, and most people panicked at the first sign of danger. Alara's calm voice made him uneasy. She wasn't afraid. All right, Miss Venn, he said finally. Let's see what you can do. If those are scouts, we need to be ready. She nodded, reaching into her bag and pulling out a small toolkit neatly organized. I can help set up defenses. I'll need scrap metal, wires, and anything that makes noise or moves. The settlers murmured among themselves. They weren't used to women, or anyone, really preparing traps or defenses. Jace studied her. The laughter was gone now. The disbelief in his eyes was replaced with a reluctant curiosity. All right, let's see what you got. Alara worked through the night, examining old scrap parts in the settlement, adjusting small engines, and setting up sensors along the perimeter. She moved with a quiet confidence, completely in her element. Jace watched, amazed despite himself. The bride he had laughed at was not only brave but brilliant. By dawn, small, mechanical devices dotted the dunes around Dustwind. Some looked like harmless scrap, others had clever mechanisms that could trigger alarms or delay intruders. Jace rode along the perimeter with a few settlers, checking her work. I gotta admit, this is smart. Really smart. Alara looked up at him, tired but unshaken. Thank you. But this is just the beginning. Whoever or whatever is out there will test us, and we'll need to be ready. Jace felt a shift inside himself, one he hadn't felt in years: respect. This woman wasn't just his bride, she might just be the person who could save Dustwind if the desert or aliens turned against them. He smiled faintly. Well, Miss Venn, looks like you're not just surviving, you're thriving. Maybe I judged you too quickly. Alara smiled back. Maybe, and maybe we'll see how well we survive tomorrow. As the twin suns rose again over Cairn 5, the settlement of Dustwind stirred with cautious optimism. A Maylorder bride had arrived, and for the first time in a long while the frontier felt a little less lonely and a lot more alive. But in the distance, hidden among the dunes, faint shadows moved. Something or someone was watching. And Dustwind Outpost was about to be tested in ways no human had ever faced before. The morning sun burned hot over Dustwind Outpost, painting the red sand in bright orange. The twin suns of Cairn 5 made the desert seem endless, with dunes stretching beyond the horizon. Jace McAllister squinted as he rode through the outskirts of the settlement, checking the small traps and mechanical devices Alara had set up the night before. He had to admit, she had worked fast. The perimeter was lined with clever sensors, noisemakers, and small mechanical alarms made from scrap parts. Most of them were disguised as ordinary desert debris. Only someone who knew what to look for would notice the difference. You really didn't waste time, Jace muttered to himself. I laughed at her, and now, well, maybe I should have held my tongue. Alara appeared behind him, carrying a bundle of wires and a small toolkit. Her hat shaded her face from the harsh sun, and her jacket flapped in the wind. I work better in the desert morning, she said with a smile. It's quieter, you can hear almost anything moving. Jace grunted. Heard anything yet? Not yet, she replied. But the sensors are ready. If something comes, we'll know before it's too late. He studied her. The woman he had laughed at for being a mail-order bride was clearly not only brave, but intelligent. She moved with precision and confidence, setting up equipment faster than most of the men in Dustwind could manage. "You know," Jace said, scratching his beard, "I didn't expect much. Maybe a few cooked meals, some company." He looked away, embarrassed. "But this is something else." Alara only smiled. "I never said I came here to be a housewife. I came here to survive and help." Jace felt a twinge of pride and shame at the same time. She was proving herself beyond anything he had imagined. By midday, the settlement's people had begun to notice her skills. A few children watched as she fixed an old water pump, making it run smoother than it had in years. One of the older settlers, Hank, approached cautiously. You fixed that thing in minutes?" Hank asked, incredulous. "We've been trying for months," Alara shrugged. "It was just a matter of understanding how it worked. Some things need patience, some need creativity, and some need a little trial and error." Hank shook his head. "Well, maybe this outpost finally got lucky." Jace, standing a few steps behind, felt a smile tug at his lips. "Yeah, we did." But the desert was not quiet for long. Around mid-afternoon, the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint, metallic hum. It wasn't the usual sound of desert storms. Jace stiffened. "There it is," he muttered. "Something's coming." Alara's eyes narrowed. Not human, too precise. Too controlled. Jace rode to the edge of the dunes with her, scanning the horizon. Small shadows moved between the dunes, too coordinated to be animals. "Scouts," he said quietly. "Xyler, maybe. They've been hitting settlements further east." Alara nodded. "We need to be ready. The traps alone won't stop them if they come in force. I can help build defenses inside the settlement too." Jace felt a rush of relief. Most people in Dustwind would panic or hide, but she, his bride, his laughing mistake, was already thinking 3 steps ahead. "All right, let's get to work," he said. Over the next few hours, Alara moved with skill and purpose. She repurposed old scrap metal into makeshift barriers, reinforced doors, and crafted small automated warning devices. Using a mix of old circuits and desert scavenging, she created machines that could detect movement, make noise, and even distract attackers. The settlers watched her, some with disbelief, others with admiration. Many had never seen such talent, such calmness in the face of potential danger. Even Jace was amazed. "You really know your way around machines," he said. "I didn't expect this from anyone here, let alone my bride." Alara smiled faintly. "I've had to learn fast. My life depended on it before. I can do the same here if we work together." By late afternoon, the Xyler scouts became bolder. Small, spider-like drones scuttled over the dunes, their metallic bodies catching the sunlight. They moved in coordinated patterns, testing the perimeter. The sensors Alara had placed immediately triggered small alarms. "Got 'em," she said calmly. "Let's see if Dustwind Outpost is ready." Jace mounted his horse and rode to intercept, signaling a few of the settlers to follow. The Xyler scouts were nimble, but the traps slowed them down. A tripwire triggered a net that lifted one drone into the air. Another stumbled into a makeshift pit covered with sand. Alara stayed in the center of the settlement, coordinating with hand signals and quick adjustments. She activated small noise devices, drawing drones toward false targets. Every move was precise, deliberate, and effective. Jace couldn't help but whistle. "I'll be damned if she's turning the desert into a weapon." By evening, the first wave of Xyler scouts had been driven back. Dustwind Outpost had survived without a single casualty. Settlers gathered around the fire, their faces showing a mix of relief and awe. Hank slapped Jace on the shoulder. "Guess I owe her an apology," he said, grinning. Jace nodded. "Yeah, me too." He looked at Alara, who was tending to the traps, adjusting a small sensor. She didn't even notice the attention she had drawn. "You did good," he said softly. Alara looked up, wiping sweat from her brow. "We did good, together." Jace felt a warmth he hadn't expected. This wasn't just respect. It was the beginning of partnership, trust, and something more. The frontier had always been lonely, dangerous, and unforgiving. But with her, it felt like it could be a place where humans could not just survive, but thrive. The night deepened, and the twin moons rose above the horizon, casting silver light over the red dunes. Somewhere far away, the main Xylar forces were observing. They had underestimated Dustwind Outpost and the humans within. Alara stayed up late, checking every device, every trap. Jace sat beside her for a moment, keeping watch. "You know," he said, "when I first laughed at you, well, I wasn't exactly right." Alara chuckled softly. "You weren't, but it's all right. People often judge too quickly." He grinned, tipping his hat. "I guess I'll have to get used to being proven wrong." She smiled back, eyes sharp and alert. "Good, because out here being wrong can get people killed." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft hum of the desert and the faint signals of distant Xylar machines. Dustwind Outpost was safe for now, but Jace knew this was only the beginning. And he also knew, deep down, that if anyone could protect this place, it was Alara, the woman he had once laughed at, and the woman who was now proving that humans, when clever and courageous, could face even the deadliest threats and survive. As the night air grew colder, Jace realized something else. He was no longer laughing. He was learning, watching, and trusting. And in this harsh desert world, trust was worth more than any weapon. The frontier had changed, and so had he. The sun had barely risen over Dustwind Outpost, but the desert was already blazing hot. The twin suns of Karen 5 reflected off the red sand, making the horizon shimmer like a mirage. Jace McAllister rode along the perimeter, squinting against the heat, checking each of the traps and sensors that Alara had set up. "Everything looks tight," he muttered to himself, tipping his hat against the glare. But despite the organized defenses, he felt an unease that had nothing to do with the sun. Something in the air, subtle and metallic, made him tense. Alara appeared at his side, walking briskly in her boots, her toolkit slung over her shoulder. "The signals are stronger today," she said calmly. "Whatever's coming isn't just scouts, it's the main force." Jace's eyes narrowed. "The Xylar?" he asked, already guessing the answer. "Yes," Alara replied. "They've been testing the settlements further east. I tracked the patterns of their scouts. They've grown bold. Dustwind is next." The settlers in the town began gathering, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. Many had seen the scouts the day before and survived, but the thought of the main force approaching made hearts pound. Hank, the older settler who had started to respect Alara, spoke up. "Main force? We're just a few dozen people." "And what may be a few broken gadgets and dirt traps?" Alara shook her head. "Not just dirt traps. These devices, combined with clever strategy and terrain advantage, we can hold them off. But we have to act quickly." Jace dismounted, pacing near the town center. "We've got some brave souls," he said, "but I don't know if that's enough." Alara stepped closer, fixing him with a sharp look. "You underestimate what humans can do when they work together. We survive because we adapt. That's what makes us strong." Jace felt a pang of pride. She had a way of speaking that reminded him of why humanity survived on the frontier, through ingenuity, courage, and teamwork. He nodded, finally letting go of some of his doubt. "All right," he said. "What's the plan?" Alara outlined her strategy quickly, pointing to the dunes and the open desert surrounding Dustwind. "We'll use the terrain to our advantage," she explained. "The dunes can hide traps and false targets. We'll make them think the settlement is weaker than it is. We'll lure them into areas we control. Every machine, every device, every obstacle will count." Jace studied the horizon. "It's risky, if they figure it out." "They won't," Alara interrupted gently. "Not if we act fast, stay coordinated, and keep moving. We can make this work. I've done this before in other situations. Different planets, different people, but the principles are the same. Prepare, adapt, outsmart." The settlers listened intently, slowly gaining hope. For the first time, they realized that even in the face of a superior enemy, humans could hold their ground. Jace mounted his horse and nodded. "All right, everyone, listen up. Follow Ilara's lead. Stick to the traps, the sensors, the signals, and keep your heads clear. We survive because we're smarter than they think." The crowd cheered quietly, a mix of courage and nervous energy. As the sun climbed higher, dust stirred in the distance. Small figures appeared on the horizon, moving in patterns that were far too organized to be anything but alien. Jace squinted, recognizing the advanced metallic designs of Xyler scouts, but far larger and more numerous than before. "They're here," he said, spurring his horse forward. Ilara adjusted a small device on the ground, a makeshift drone that hummed to life. "Sensors are ready," she said. "I'll track their movement. You control the fighters." Jace nodded, his hand tightening on the reins. "All right. Everyone stay calm. Follow the plan." The first wave of Xyler advanced, walking over the dunes, their limbs sharp and precise. Ilara's devices immediately began triggering alarms and false signals. Some of the aliens stumbled into pits disguised by sand. Others were drawn toward mechanical decoys that emitted fake energy signatures. Jace led the human fighters through the narrow passages between traps, dodging laser blasts and tossing grenades that created smoke and fire. Despite their smaller numbers, the humans had the advantage of preparation and knowledge of the terrain. Ilara moved with incredible speed and precision, recalibrating devices as needed, signaling with hand gestures, and redirecting mechanical distractions. She was everywhere at once, coordinating traps and fighters. Jace could hardly keep track of her, and he wouldn't have wanted to. "You really do have a talent for this," Jace shouted over the noise, barely keeping his horse steady. Ilara didn't answer. Her focus was absolute, her mind racing with calculations, probabilities, and contingencies. Hours passed. The battle continued, the sun beginning its descent. The Xyler were relentless, adapting to some of the traps and learning quickly, but Ilara had anticipated much of their behavior. Every human move, every mechanical device, every diversion was calculated to exhaust and confuse the invaders. The settlers fought bravely, inspired by her leadership. Many had never held a weapon in anger, but under her guidance, they were precise and effective. Jace watched with admiration as his bride became the backbone of their defense. At one point, a massive Xyler drone broke through the defenses, heading straight for the settlement's central water supply. Jace spurred his horse forward, ready to intercept, but Ilara had already anticipated this. She triggered a hidden device, a net launcher disguised as a rock which entangled the drone mid-step. Sparks flew and the alien machine fell with a loud crash. Jace grinned despite himself. "Damn, girl, that was perfect." Ilara's eyes scanned the horizon. "Keep moving. Others are coming. Don't celebrate yet." The battle raged until twilight. By the time the twin moons rose, the Xyler had begun retreating, confused and frustrated by the humans' tactics. Dustwind Outpost had survived its first major assault. The settlers gathered around the fire, exhausted but alive. They cheered and clapped, some wiping tears from their eyes. Hank approached Ilara, shaking her hand firmly. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I've never seen anyone do what you just did. You saved us." Ilara shook her head. "We saved ourselves. I only showed the way. You all fought bravely. That's what matters." Jace watched from the sidelines, heart swelling with pride and respect. "You're more than I imagined," he said softly, approaching her. "I laughed at you when you arrived. Guess I was a fool." Ilara smiled faintly. "You're not the only one who learns. The frontier teaches quickly." Jace chuckled, tipping his hat. "I reckon it does, but I'm glad you're here to teach me." The settlers returned to their homes, exhausted but confident. Dustwind Outpost had faced the main threat and survived. Humans had proven once again that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could triumph over a technologically superior enemy. Alara stayed awake late into the night, checking devices, adjusting sensors, and making notes for improvements. Jace joined her, sitting quietly on the porch. "You're relentless," he said. "I have to be," she replied. "The desert doesn't forgive mistakes." "Neither do enemies like the Xyler," he nodded, watching her work. "And yet you inspire hope. That's something even the desert can't take away." Alara paused, looking at him. "Humans are strong because we adapt, we create, we survive. That's the real strength, Jace. Not weapons, not numbers, courage, intelligence, teamwork." He felt a deep respect for her, more than he had ever felt for anyone in his life. And for the first time, he realized that Dustwind Outpost wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Somewhere in the desert, beyond the dunes, shadows moved. The Xyler had retreated, but they were learning. They would return, bigger and stronger. But Dustwind Outpost had something they didn't expect: humans who were clever, brave, and ready. And at the center of it all was Alara Vin, the woman Jace had laughed at, the bride he had doubted, and now the heart of their defense. The frontier was dangerous, unforgiving, and wild, but humans, as always, found a way. And tomorrow, they would face the Xyler again, smarter, stronger, and united. The desert sun beat down harshly on Dustwind Outpost, painting the settlement in shades of orange and red. The twin suns of Karen 5 glared from above, making the sand shimmer like liquid fire. Jace McAllister stood atop a dune, scanning the horizon with narrowed eyes. Something in the distance shimmered unnaturally, shapes too precise to be natural dunes, too coordinated to be random. "They're coming," Jace muttered, gripping the reins of his horse. Beside him, Alara adjusted a sensor device she had placed earlier. Wires snaked across the sand like small, mechanical veins, connected to noisemakers, alarm triggers, and small automated devices. "Not just coming," she said calmly. "They're organized, expect multiple waves." "But we're ready." Jace's jaw tightened. He had fought off scouts before, but this was different. The Xyler were advancing in full force, with larger machines, faster drones, and more precise tactics. Most settlers would panic, but not Alara. She moved with a quiet confidence, her mind racing through strategies, adjustments, and contingencies. Inside the settlement, humans hurried to follow her instructions. Barricades were strengthened, and trenches dug where the sand was soft enough to hide them. Every building, every street corner was reinforced in preparation for the Xyler advance. Alara directed each task with precision. "Move the barrels to block the east path," she shouted to a group of settlers. "Keep the wires taut, and make sure the sensors are angled properly." Jace watched, impressed. He had always relied on brute strength, experience, and instinct, but Alara relied on planning, calculation, and ingenuity. And it worked. Dustwind was no longer a simple outpost. It was a defensive maze, a trap-laden fortress. Hank, one of the older settlers, approached Jace, panting. "I don't know if we can hold them," he said. "They've got machines bigger than anything we've ever seen." Jace looked at the horizon where Xyler silhouettes shimmered. "We can," he said. "As long as we follow Alara's lead. She's smarter than them, and that counts for more than you think." By mid-afternoon, the first wave of Xyler attackers arrived. Their mechanical legs clanged across the dunes, and the air hummed with energy weapons. Jace signaled to the settlers to stay calm. "Stick to the plan," he said. "No heroics. Follow the traps, follow Alara." Alara monitored the battlefield from the center of the settlement, her eyes darting from sensor to sensor. A small drone detected movement near the north trench. She activated a signal, sending it to a mechanical net trap. Within moments, a Xyler drone was caught, flailing and sparking. "Good start," she muttered. "Keep them coming." Jace rode to intercept another wave, leading a small group of settlers armed with rifles and makeshift weapons. They dodged laser blasts, using the dunes as cover while triggering sand traps that slowed the Xyler machines. The desert was working in their favor. Every dune, every slope, Every hidden pit had been used as part of Alara's plan. Hours passed, the sun beginning its descent. The Xyler pressed harder, sending more machines, trying to overwhelm the defenses. But Alara's traps were adaptive. She adjusted devices on the fly, rerouted signals, and even improvised a few new gadgets using scrap metal and circuits. At one point, a massive Xyler walker broke through the western barricade, heading straight for the water supply. Jace spurred his horse forward, aiming to block it, but Alara had anticipated this. She activated a hidden device, and a weighted net launched from a disguised chute, wrapping around the walker and causing it to stumble. Sparks flew, and the machine crashed heavily into the sand. The settlers cheered, though there was no time to celebrate. Another wave was coming, bigger and faster than the last. Alara moved with uncanny speed, adjusting traps, signaling alarms, and keeping the settlers coordinated. Jace couldn't believe how much she could manage at once. She was not just defending Dustwind, she was orchestrating a battle like a seasoned general. "You're unbelievable," Jace shouted, ducking behind a sand barrier as a drone fired past him. Alara didn't answer, only glanced at him briefly. "Focus, Jace, keep the perimeter secure." The battle intensified as twilight approached. The twin moons of Karen 5 rose, casting silver light over the desert. Shadows danced across the dunes, and the Xyler's mechanical silhouettes moved like ghosts. The settlers were exhausted but determined, following every instruction, every signal, every adjustment. Alara's ingenuity continued to shine. She had constructed a series of diversion devices, metallic decoys with blinking lights and heat signatures that mimicked humans. The Xyler machines, confused by the false signals, attacked the decoys instead of the settlement. This allowed human fighters to strike strategically, disabling several machines before they could reach critical points. Jace watched as Alara activated a small, improvised flamethrower attached to a rolling cart. It swept across the sand, forcing a group of Xyler drones to scatter. Sparks flew, metal clanged, and the desert became a chaotic battlefield, but one carefully controlled by her strategy. Hank shouted, amazed. "I've never seen anyone fight like that. She's a genius." Jace nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "That's understatement of the year." The night wore on, and the Xyler attackers began to falter. Their initial confidence had been broken by Dustwind's traps, diversions, and the humans' relentless defense. Even their advanced machines struggled against the adaptive, unpredictable tactics orchestrated by Alara. At one point, the largest Xyler walker advanced toward the main settlement again. Jace and a small team of fighters tried to intercept it, but it was heavily armored. Alara acted quickly. She activated a trap hidden under the dunes, a collapsible sand pit reinforced with metallic spikes. The walker fell into the pit, struggling violently. Jace and the settlers quickly disabled it with makeshift explosives, finally toppling the massive machine. The battlefield fell silent for a moment, the hum of the Xyler machinery fading. Dustwind Outpost had survived the night. Exhausted but victorious, the settlers gathered around the central fire. Faces were smudged with dirt, sweat, and soot, but there was a glow of triumph. They had faced the might of the Xyler and survived. Hank approached Alara, shaking her hand firmly. "I don't even know what to say. You saved all of us, every single person here." Alara shook her head. "You all did the fighting. I only guided it." Humans are stronger than any machine if they work together and think fast. Jace approached, his hat pulled low over his brow. "I laughed at you when you arrived," he said quietly. I thought you'd be helpless. Guess I was wrong." Alara smiled faintly. "Judging by appearances can be dangerous, especially in the frontier." Jace chuckled. "Yeah, lesson learned." As the twin moons climbed higher, Alara checked her devices one last time, ensuring the perimeter was secure. The Xyler would likely retreat, but she knew this was only the first real battle. They would return stronger and more prepared. Jace joined her on the porch, sitting quietly beside her. "You really are something else," he said softly. Alara looked at him. "We survive because we adapt. We survive because we are clever, and we survive because we fight together." He nodded, realizing the truth of her words. Dustwind Outpost had survived not because of strength alone, but because humans could think, adapt, and act as one. "And we'll keep surviving," she added, a faint smile crossing her face. "No matter what comes." Jace reached over, lightly resting a hand on hers. "I think we make a good team." She looked at him, eyes glowing with quiet determination. "The best team," she said. Outside, the desert was calm once more. The Xyler machines lay scattered across the dunes, defeated or retreating. Dustwind Outpost had proven that humans, with courage, ingenuity, and teamwork, could face even the most advanced enemies and survive. And at the heart of it all was Alara Ven, the bride Jace had laughed at, now the living proof that humanity's true strength was not in weapons or numbers, but in intelligence, courage, and the will to survive. The frontier was dangerous, wild, and unpredictable, but humans had once again shown that they could thrive where others would fail. And tomorrow, when the Xyler returned, Dustwind Outpost would be ready. The twin suns of Karen 5 had barely begun to rise, painting the red dunes of Dustwind Outpost with golden light. The desert seemed calm, almost peaceful, but Jace McAllister knew better. He had faced countless dangers here, yet the feeling in the air told him that the Xyler were not finished. He mounted his horse, scanning the horizon. "They'll come back," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "And this time it won't be scouts. The main army will be here." Alara appeared at his side, carrying a small toolkit and checking the sensors one last time. Her face was calm, determined, but there was a sharp glint in her eyes. She had spent the night adjusting defenses, improving traps, and refining every device in Dustwind Outpost. "I know," she said simply, "and we'll be ready." Jace studied her. The woman he had once laughed at for being a Maylorder bride had grown into a leader, a strategist, and the backbone of the settlement's defense. His respect for her was deep, and for the first time he felt something more than admiration, trust, partnership, even pride. Hank and the other settlers gathered, ready to defend their homes. Weapons were checked, barricades reinforced, and every trap tested. The mood was tense, but there was a quiet confidence now, a sense that Dustwind could survive anything. Alara addressed the group. "The Xyler will come in waves. Each wave will be stronger than the last. Follow my instructions. Stay alert, trust each other, and most of all, trust yourselves." The settlers nodded, a mix of fear and determination in their eyes. "We've got this," Hank said, gripping his rifle. "If she says we can, we can." Jace looked at Alara. "You've done something I didn't think anyone could. You've made us believe." She smiled faintly. "Belief is important, but skill, preparation, and teamwork, that's what will save us." By midday, the Xyler attack began. This time, it was no small group of scouts or isolated drones. The horizon was filled with massive machines, flying drones, and sharp-limbed walkers. Their energy weapons glinted in the sunlight, reflecting the advanced technology that humans could only imagine. Jace spurred his horse forward, rallying the human fighters. "Stick to the plan. Keep calm. Follow Alara." Alara stayed in the center, coordinating devices, adjusting sensors, and guiding the settlers through the battle. Her traps had grown even more elaborate since the last attack. Hidden pits, weighted nets, mechanical decoys, and small automated devices created confusion among the Xyler forces. The first wave advanced into the desert. Many Xyler machines were disabled by clever diversions and traps. Sparks flew, metal clanged, and the sound of battle echoed across the dunes. Humans fought bravely, inspired by Alara's strategy. A massive Xyler walker broke through the defenses near the water supply. Jace and a team of settlers attempted to stop it, but it was heavily armored. Alara acted quickly, activating a newly built device, a catapult-like mechanism that hurled weighted metal over the walker. The machine stumbled, tipping dangerously, and Jace and the settlers finished the job with precision strikes. Hank shook his head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like this. She's outsmarting them at every turn." Jace grinned, dodging a laser blast. "Told you." "That bride I laughed at. She's our secret weapon." Hours passed. The Xyler continued to send wave after wave, but Dustwind Outpost held. Alara's ingenuity was unmatched. She had created a network of sensors that allowed them to anticipate enemy movements, and her traps were adaptive, learning as the battle went on. Every time the Xyler tried a new tactic, Alara countered it. At one point, a massive flying drone hovered above the settlement, firing energy blasts at the buildings. Jace and two settlers attempted to shoot it down, but it was too fast. Alara quickly rigged a magnetic pulse device from spare circuits and wires. She activated it remotely, sending a pulse that temporarily disabled the drone systems. It crashed into the dunes, creating a cloud of dust and sparks. The settlers cheered. Hope surged in their hearts. They had faced a superior force and survived. Alara moved tirelessly, her focus unwavering. She adjusted alarms, repaired damaged devices, and coordinated the human fighters with perfect timing. Even Jace, who had seen a lifetime of battles, was in awe of her calm, decisive leadership. "You're amazing," he shouted over the noise, dodging another laser blast. Alara only glanced at him. "Focus. The battle isn't over." As night fell, the Xyler began to retreat. Dustwind Outpost had survived the largest assault in its history. The settlers were exhausted, dirty, and bruised, but their spirits were high. They had defended their home, their lives, and their freedom. Hank approached Alara, shaking her hand firmly. "I don't know what to say. You saved all of us, every single one." Alara smiled. "We saved ourselves. I only guided it. Humans are clever, adaptable, and brave. That's why we survive." Jay stepped forward, tipping his hat. "I laughed at you when you arrived, thought you'd be helpless. Guess I was wrong." Alara chuckled softly. "Judging people by appearances can be dangerous, especially in the frontier." Jace grinned. "Lesson learned, loud and clear." The twin moons of Karen 5 rose high over the desert, casting silver light across Dustwind Outpost. The battle was over for now, but Alara knew it was only the beginning. The Xyler had retreated, but they would return, smarter and stronger. She walked through the settlement, checking devices, repairing damage, and speaking with the settlers. "The Xyler will learn," she said. "But so will we. We will be ready next time. Every trap, every device, every plan we improve." Jace watched her work, a deep respect and admiration growing in his chest. "You've done more than just defend the settlement," he said softly. "You've given people hope. And hope, that's powerful." Alara looked up at him, eyes bright. "Humans survive because we adapt, we create, and we fight together. That's our real strength. Weapons and numbers matter, but not as much as courage, intelligence, and teamwork." He reached out, resting a hand lightly on hers. "I think we make a good team," she smiled. "The best team." The settlers began rebuilding. Barricades were strengthened, devices repaired, and homes restored. Children peeked out from behind walls, curious and wide-eyed, seeing their parents and leaders working together to rebuild. Jace and Alara stood together, looking over the settlement. The desert stretched endlessly before them, harsh and unforgiving, yet filled with opportunity. Humans had carved a home here against all odds, and with Alara's guidance, they had proven that even the smallest outpost could stand against a superior force. "Tomorrow, they'll come back," Jace said quietly. Alara nodded. "And we'll be ready. Every time we'll adapt, we'll fight, and we'll survive. Humans always do." Jace smiled faintly. "Yeah, we do." The desert wind blew across the dunes, carrying the scent of sand, metal, and hope. Dustwind Outpost had survived, and humanity had shown its true strength: intelligence, courage, and the will to survive. Alara looked at the horizon, the stars beginning to twinkle above. "The frontier is dangerous," she said softly, "but with humans there's always a way." Jace pulled his hat lower over his brow, glancing at her. "And with you, I think we can face anything," she smiled. "Together we can do more than survive, we can thrive." The twin moons cast long shadows across the dunes, illuminating a settlement that had fought against impossible odds, and won. Dustwind Outpost was no longer just a small outpost on a barren planet. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and determination. And at the heart of it all was Alara Ven, the woman Jace had laughed at, the bride he had doubted, and the hero who had shown that humans could overcome anything, even a superior alien force, through intelligence, teamwork, and courage. The frontier was still wild, harsh, and unpredictable, but humans had proven once again that they could carve a life, survive, and thrive. And tomorrow, when the Xyler returned, Dustwind Outpost would be waiting. Stronger, smarter, and united. Humans would endure. Humans would win. Humans would thrive. And together, Jace and Alara would face whatever the frontier threw at them, side by side, as partners, as leaders, and as symbols of human ingenuity.